Okay, boys and girls, and welcome to library. This is Mrs. Beckerer, and today we're going to begin a unit where we're going to be learning about traditional literature. And this is one of my favorite sections in the library because it includes a whole bunch of little mini genres or mini types of books, and they come from all over the world. They're very old stories that have been passed down. And there are stories that teach us lessons. There are stories that represent people from every part of the world. So it's a really great section of the library. They're all located in one specific spot, and that is the 398.2s, which is confusing because they're made up stories and yet they're on the nonfiction side. And that's because they deal with cultures and groups of people. Even though they're made up stories, they represent what a certain group of people would tell it like or believe about something. Okay, so the first type of traditional literature we're going to talk about is fairy tales. And again, fairy tales are some of the most familiar stories. Lots of you guys know a lot of fairy tales. You see some book examples. These are straight out of our library. We have lots of stories about Beauty and the Beast. We have lots of different versions of Cinderella. The one you see in the picture here is Adelita, which is the Mexican one. We also have Lone Popo, which is the Chinese one. We have an Irish one. We have ones that are Cajun. There are stories from Cinderella from all over the world. Down here at the bottom, Petite Rouge, that's the Cajun Red Riding Hood. We have some other versions of that as well. Fairy tales, again, as you know, they're going to use magic a lot of times. They're going to have good characters and bad characters. And we'll learn some more about fairy tales in just a little bit. The next section of traditional literature is the folk tales. And again, these are stories that every country in the world has stories that have been passed down from generation to generation. So great-grandpa tells grandpa, grandpa tells dad, dad tells you, and you tell your kids someday. Okay, these are folk tales, stories that are very old. They oftentimes teach us a lesson. And so here we see a couple of examples. Anansi the spider. There are lots of stories about Anansi. He's from Africa. So these would be stories that kids in Africa would learn. The next one you see on the cover here is Tiki Tiki Tembo. Tiki Tiki Tembo is a great story. It's from the Asian part of the world, so it's a Chinese, Japanese type story, and it has a great lesson as well. And this slide, we're going to see a little bit about an American type of folktale. Our country has its own unique style of folktale called a tall tale. And tall tales are basically stories, again, that are passed down, but they're exaggerated. So you see things that couldn't happen in real life, they supersize it and exaggerate it. So we see great examples of some of these bigger than life kinds of characters. We have Paul Bunyan. We have Pico's Bill, and we have Davy Crockett. All of these are folk heroes from our country, the United States. And another kind of folktale is what we call legends. And legends are stories that basically teach us a lesson about where things came from. They're usually kind of philosophical, so a lot of times the titles will start with why this or why that. Like, for example, this first one is why mosquitoes buzz in people's ears. Sometimes they start with how the turtle got hit to be so slow or something like that. Usually they'll start with a how-to or a why. The Legend of the Indian Paintbrush by Tony DePaulo, one of my favorite authors. Again, he writes a lot of legends that are stories that tell how something came to be. In the Indian Paintbrush, we see the story of how the colors came from the sunset and came down to be part of their colors they paint with. Okay, and this section of traditional literature is what we call trickster tales. And there are trickster tales from all over the world. But the thing that makes a trickster tale unique is that the main character is kind of clever. He's smart. And he's usually a little tricky fellow. He might be that way just to cause mischief. Or he might be tricky because he wants the other character or the reader to learn a lesson. Okay, so we have Raven, which is a story that the raven is tricky. We also have Zomo the rabbit, which is from West Africa. So again, you can see they are folk tales. They're a type of folk tale, but the key to these are that the main character is tricking the other character, playing a trick. Okay, and this category is one of our favorites. And when you get into 4th grade, you'll have a whole unit about just this particular genre, and that is mythology. Mythology are stories of Greek gods and goddesses, and not just Greek, although that tends to be one of the more popular ones. We have Medusa and Hercules. We also have myths, though, in this section for Indian myths, Japanese myths, Middle Eastern myths. So again, myths are a great story if you want to learn about more about religion and how we came from and why we came from. These are stories with gods and goddesses and supernatural powers often. Okay, and this next section is a smaller section in our library, but these are also very important folk tales. They're called fables. This is a type of traditional literature called a fable. And basically, it teaches you a lesson. So a fable is a shorter story. It's not a very long one, but it's designed so that in the story you will hear the characters learn a lesson or teach us a lesson. For example, in the story of the rabbit and the turtle, or sometimes you've heard it as the tortoise and the hare, again, the lesson is to always try your best. Even if you're slow like the turtle, he kept trying and kept trying. He did his best and he ended up winning, where the hare was too quick and too haughty, and well, he was very fast, but he was too proud and he didn't try very hard, and he ended up losing in the end because he was lazy and didn't work hard. So again, the lesson there is to work hard, to be persistent and do your best, and in the end you'll win. So that's a great example of a fable, which is a short story that teaches us a lesson. Okay, boys and girls, so that pretty much wraps up traditional literature for us. These are some great types of stories. I hope you'll explore this section of the library, and I hope you find some new favorites maybe you've never thought to try. Maybe you'll try a new genre and maybe learn something about a new group of people, a new culture, or you might learn a lesson along the way just for the fun of it.